Hi everybody and welcome back to Hilltop City Life. Thanks so much for joining us for another episode this week. My name's Joe and this is my wife Ellie. And if you like our videos, don't forget to click like and subscribe. And if you don't like our videos, click like and subscribe. And click the little bell that appears next to the subscribe button as well. That's really important because then you get notifications when we upload a new video.
Yeah.
So anyway, we love talking about things that have real impact on our everyday lives. You know, the sorts of things that you're genuinely going to come across and be thinking about in your walk with God. And one of the things we thought we'd name this video a living sacrifice, and we're going to cover a few topics surrounding that general area of what it means to be a living sacrifice and what Jesus is talking about there and what those words are. I say Jesus. Where's that concept from?
Well, it's from Romans, so it would be Paul in Romans, I believe. So it's Romans 12 verse 1.
Well remembered. Didn't even look at your notes there.
Oh, I know it well. It was one of my baptism verses, actually. It says, I appeal to you, therefore, brothers, by the mercies of God, to present your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable to God, which is your spiritual worship. It goes on to say, do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind, that by testing you may discern what is the perfect will of God, what is good and acceptable and perfect. Okay, so Paul's starting off by saying that we need to present our bodies as a living sacrifice, which is holy and acceptable to God and which is our spiritual worship. So kind of, I think most people think, well, what do you mean a living sacrifice? Does that mean, what do you mean I've got to take up my cross every day and die to myself? What does that mean? I think it means it's about dying to the flesh. Now, there are two of us, aren't there? There's the flesh you, which was alive before you became a Christian, and then there's the spirit you, which becomes alive as you believe in Jesus Christ. And it's the spirit you that God is trying to grow and develop. That's the character he wants to develop in you. That's the thing that's going to heaven. So to die to the flesh, I think, is to die to the earthly, selfish, self-centered, self-seeking, me ways. I think that's what it means. And so conversely, what are we being called to do? And this is what we were talking about. You're called to look beyond yourself, aren't you? You're called to look to others.
It sounds immensely challenging. I do love that verse. Just before we place something on ourselves which seems like an impossible demand, it seems to me that what Paul's talking about is a process, isn't it? Be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Now, of course, part of that transformation happens the moment that we believe, the moment that we experience a genuine heartfelt confession of faith and that we're born again of the Spirit, as Jesus says. But then the being transformed by the renewing of your mind, that's something that happens over time, isn't it? You don't immediately understand what it means to die to self. And before everybody comments, Ellie does know that we were dead in our transgressions. I don't think that's what you meant by we were alive in that flesh before. That's the old man, you know, that's the man that's died in Christ, been buried, and we've been born again of the Spirit. So there's this process that's happening, not just of becoming nicer, but of changing the way we think, changing how we understand life and how we interact with other people and responding to God.
Yeah. I think, and what it means by do not be conformed to this world, well, the world says that it's about material things. The world says it's about career, it's about status, it's about the size of my house, it's about what I have, what I can get, what I've earned, what I deserve. And actually that isn't what Jesus was about. Jesus was a living sacrifice himself. He sacrificed his life and he came to serve and to serve others and to be a blessing to others. And that's what he did. His life was to bless other people, to heal and to minister to people.
And we're called to be like him.
Yeah.
And I think in our natural selves it can seem a little bit confusing. So we're called to be Christ-like and we're called to this new life. and yet we're supposed to give everything away. We're supposed to not hold on to our money or our possessions. We're supposed to be generous with our time. We're supposed to be compassionate to one another. It sounds as if what's actually happening is a lot is being taken from us. Where is the blessing that we're supposed to receive? And yet, I've mentioned this in a few videos in the past, that for all of these commands, and you might even say demands, that are placed on us, which seem incredibly burdensome, Jesus actually says, my yoke is easy and my burden is light, because he knows something that we don't know, especially when we first come to the Lord. Jesus knows some stuff that we aren't quite privy to yet until we really engage long term in this transforming of our mind and this learning, this new knowledge, this new way of being.
I mean, it's a massive thing, isn't it? I think it takes a lifetime of transformation. I don't think we ever get there until we are in eternity with our Father in heaven. We are constantly being changed and shown new things, and we have new revelations being brought to us. And that dying to self and becoming a less selfish person, we're called to look to those around us, aren't we? Okay, well, what can I do for somebody else today? And it doesn't have to be a massive thing. I think God would rather you started small than found it utterly draining and weighing you down. Okay, what can I see around me today, Lord? Who am I going to be in contact with? How can I be a blessing to that person? And we're following the 40 Acts, aren't we? Where's it from? The 40 Acts online. Servant. We'll put it at the bottom. I apologise, but we will put it at the bottom.
Tip of my tongue. Yeah. It's killing me. Oh.
And each act is about looking beyond yourself and looking for a way to be a blessing to somebody else. And I found one day that I couldn't do the act. And actually, it was the simple act of you always throw the ball for the dogs. And it was a simple act of me just saying, actually, I'm going to put my shoes on and throw the ball for the dogs. And actually...
And now Ellie's committed to doing that every single day.
And then it was, Lord, how can I be a blessing today? Well, go and visit your grandma who's 101. Go and visit her. She needs somebody to visit her. Go and buy some flowers for your mum. Your mum needs a blessing. Go and bless somebody else in a small way. Maybe it's just asking somebody how they are. Or maybe it's giving a financial offering, or maybe it's just spending some time with somebody, or maybe it could be anything, but asking the Lord, okay, how can I look beyond myself, be a living sacrifice, and give of myself to somebody else?
Yeah, and it's crucial as well, I think, that we really understand that this isn't legalism. This isn't about, I'm going to try and be a good person because that's what a good Christian would do. The transformation that comes by the renewing of your mind is about getting to know God and knowing his character, and you will then naturally, gradually want to respond to him in that way. Saved, on the day you're saved by grace, nothing we can do about it, boom, we're in heaven. Free gift of God, fantastic. But the transforming, renewing, becoming a more effective person, that develops over time. Now, we're not saying, okay, now you need to start going and being good because you've been told to, and you'll be ineffective and powerless otherwise, which may or may not be true.
That's just going to cause stress and anxiety anyway, isn't it? And negativity.
Faith without works is dead, which sounds a little bit legalistic, but what's actually being said is, as I've quoted this one before, Martin Luther says, faith without works is no faith at all, is it? If you really believe, there's going to be an outworking of that.
Yeah.
And I think what we come to realise gradually over time is that self-centeredness actually makes us really unhappy. It actually makes us unhappy. I think the most miserable people I've ever met are the ones who are talking about themselves all the time, how they are, the bad things that are happening in their lives, what they see as negative around them, that navel-gazing attitude of constantly focusing on your own issues, your own problems, even your own potential successes and stresses. Self-centeredness makes us unhappy. It does.
It never satisfies.
No.
It never brings joy. And we've talked about this before, every single thing that you buy rots and decays. And that high from going out and buying something to try and give yourself a little bit of a lift is so temporary. And then you're on to the next thing, and then I need the next thing. And actually my career, I've got that job, but it doesn't bring me as much joy as I thought it was going to. And that's when we need to start thinking, okay, I've got to look beyond myself. I've got to be doing something else, because what is it all about? If it's, if I'm serving myself and I'm not getting any peace, not getting any joy, there must be something more. There must be something to what Jesus is saying, what Paul is saying about taking up your cross daily, about dying to yourself. If you hold on to your life, you will lose it. But those who give their lives for me will find their lives,
Yeah. It seems incredibly challenging, doesn't it?
It is
Those
challenging.
early Christians who were selling everything that they owned and giving it to the church or giving it to the poor.
Yeah.
And yet, constantly there's this, in the flesh, there's this conflict of what we actually get is joy and peace and life, and joy and peace and life and love. Goodness, isn't that what we all really want? And as well, when we live to expand that metaphor, having tight fists and holding on to everything, after a while that probably gets quite painful. But that relaxed hand is far more comfortable.
And so what is our physical posture? Is it, or our spiritual posture, is it of a closed-fisted, tight, selfish person? Is that what we want to be? Stressed and worn out and, like you say, in pain? Or do we simply relax and let go, allow God to take control, trust him, and ask him what he wants us to do with our lives? I think that is the only way we find peace. That's the only way we've ever found peace.
Freedom.
From our experience, freedom to let go and to let God take a hold of the reins, instead of you trying to take the reins, trying to control where you're going. Actually, surely God in heaven knows better than we do. He's the Alpha, he's the Omega. He's already seen it all anyway. He is at the end, he's now, and he's at the beginning. So he knows the plan, he's seen the plan. Surely he has a better plan than us.
He probably has an idea what he's talking about, doesn't he?
And shakes his head when we stop him or when we go off on another path.
So on the one hand, we say we're sure that God's got a good plan for our lives, but that we don't really believe it or trust it.
Well, it's
want to see it first in the bank account. Show me it in the bank account first, Lord, and then maybe I'll.
Yeah, they say it's when the rubber hits the road, isn't it? And when it starts to get difficult. So finances is a big one. Okay, I'd love you to give some money and be generous. Really, Lord? Okay, that's great. Yes, I'll do that. So we give £50. Oh, but there's a bill tomorrow, Lord, and there's only £10 in my account, and the bill's £50. But God's telling me not to worry, but I am worried because the bank says there's not enough. But God's telling me, I am your provider, I am your Jehovah Jireh. There will be enough, there's more than enough. And that is when, my goodness, you've got to trust. And how big is your faith? How big is your God?
It's, being... Trust and obey, for there's no better way to be happy in Jesus than to trust and obey. It's true. And that we mustn't ever fall into the trap of thinking, well, I'll give this last 50 quid because God will see that I've been faithful and I'll get 100. We read the letters from the Apostle Paul. We know that he was hungry sometimes. We know that he went through hard times. God was never saying that you won't be hungry, or that it's like some kind of mathematical equation where you give X and you get XX. It just doesn't work like that. But we are, another thing, I said joy and peace and love. Well, there was freedom. That's one crucial fundamental part of Jesus' ministry, was about freedom, setting the captives free. And that bondage to sin, I think, definitely extends to self-centeredness and constantly thinking about what you need and what I want and what I have to hold on to for myself. The first two people, Adam and Eve, they were immediately given jobs. They had work to do. And it wasn't to brush their own hair or make their own clothes or build themselves a nice little house. Their first work was about putting themselves out there and, being a benefit and a blessing to the world around them. It's the very first work, and that's how they found fulfillment and joy and that freedom that God promises.
And let's not forget, we have an enemy. We have somebody who sits on our shoulders, and that is the small voice that tells us, I need that, I want that, what about me, what about me, what about me? What am I going to do if I give that away? Well, I don't want to do that, why should I do that? That's my time, that's my free time, that's my thing, that's my belonging. And the devil wants us to be in a bondage and to be bound up in chains. And God just wants us to be free. Matthew 6, 19, laying up treasures in heaven, not storing treasures on earth where moth and rust destroy, but storing for ourselves treasures in heaven. And treasures in heaven are those things that we can't hold on to. They are the love, the joy, the peace, the patience, the goodness, the things that we've done for others, the joy that we've brought into the world, the blessing that we've been. Those are the things that we're storing for ourselves in heaven. Those are the things that are going to remain. And then following on from that, Matthew 6:25, the parable about not worrying, not being anxious about what you're going to wear, what you're going to eat, what you're going to drink. Your Father in heaven knows you need those things. But the proviso is, seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness. We talked about this last week. And then all these things will be added to you. Okay? If you are serving God and you are trusting your God and you are doing his will, this word says, don't worry about what you need.
Amen.
I've got it in hand.
Amen.
And again, that's a trust issue.
If.
Yeah.
Not if you're trying to manipulate him, because
No.
you think if you give enough to charity, you're going to get a nice house.
Yeah.
You know.
Enough might not be what you thought was enough. Enough might be one meal a day. Enough might be a lot less than you've been used to. What we think we need and what we actually need are two very different things. And God might be trying to teach you a lesson in that. If you were somebody who is used to going out and satisfying yourself by buying things, actually that might be a time of real stripping back and of God saying, what do you actually need? You don't need anything. You've got something in the cupboard to eat. There's enough petrol in the car for today. Just trust me and rest in me. I assure you, you don't need those new shoes that you've been looking at.
Yeah. Can I just come in here?
Of course
You
you
know,
can.
I think God really knows what we need, and he tells us what we need by telling us what we should do. He tells us that we should love the Lord our God with all our hearts, with all our minds, and with all our strength, because we need to.
Yeah.
It's the only way for us to really be
Focus
fulfilled
on
and
him.
right. A new command I give to you, that you love each other and love... and then check out Matthew 5:44 as well to see how that all links together. And what I wanted to just say was that God never said, in terms of all these things will be added to you. You know, look, seek first the kingdom and his righteousness, and all these things will be added to you. God never said, and he isn't saying, be a Christian and you'll get loads of cool stuff. No, he's freeing us from navel-gazing and self-obsession by clearly stating our responsibilities. It's not our job to worry about whether we have enough. Scripture is clear that that is God's job. Our job is to love God, to love each other, to love our enemies, to pray for those who persecute us. So
That
we
needs
know,
to be our concern.
and God knows that that's not just what we are told to do, but it's what we need to work as human beings, as new creations. That's how we function properly.
Yeah. Gosh, it's such an interesting topic, isn't it? And like we said at the start, I think it takes a lifetime of understanding and of speaking to God, of reading these truths and getting them from head knowledge to heart knowledge, and then actually living it. I think the only way you see this as a truth is to live it and to test it and to say, right, I am going to make that effort to look beyond myself today, Lord, and help me to see other people and where they are and how I can be a blessing to them, whether I feel like it or not.
So take a challenge, go out and bless someone today, not because you're going to get anything for it, but just respond if you get a little twinge of compassion, a little challenge that you might be pushing yourself a little bit far, and do it anyway. Listen to that still small voice. Be blessed and be a blessing.
Yeah, God bless. See you next time.
See you next time.